My parents will divorce if I don't break up with my girlfriend. I have a girlfriend at college and my parents don't approve of our relationship at all. Last few weeks they've been furious about it, and threatening to divorce. They told me not to date until I get my bachelor's, which is at least 1 semester from now, and to date only Asian, preferably Chinese American, girls. I'm Asian, and she's white. We didn't even do anything inappropriate. We're just close friends, often hang out together on campus. And we're in a swing dance club. I didn't even tell my parents about my relationship. How did they find out? My sister, 18 female, also goes to same college as me, and she always saw me walking around holding hands and eating in the cafeteria with the same girl. Instead of asking me about it, she told my parents. She took pictures of us from afar and used it as evidence against me. When I told my parents that both my girlfriend and I are legal adults, and that her parents approve of the relationship, they said, "You'll always be a child in our eyes, and her parents don't influence us." They're primarily mad because I kept my relationship a secret for so long, and secondary reason is that I'm breaking their expectations about dating. My grades are fine. I have a 3.8 GPA and got a summer internship, and I've never gotten in trouble at school. What's worse is that my sister was allowed to date as early as her freshman year in high school. She's even invited her boyfriends home and slept in the same bed as them, and went on vacations with their families. She's had like 3 boyfriends already, as she gets into dating drama frequently. When I, 3 years older than her, asked my parents if I could date, they said no, because they don't want me getting in trouble. She did mediocre in high school and barely squeaked out a 3.0 her first semester in college. When I told my parents that I love my girlfriend and I'm not breaking up with her, they said that they will divorce each other if I don't break up with her ASAP. They were forcing me to pull out my phone and text her, saying that I want to break up. I refused, arguing that they let my irresponsible, academically struggling younger sister date, but not me. My parents said that I value white trash over family, and that they spent 21 years raising a failure. I'm not a failure, my sister is. My dad hit me several times, giving me a black eye, while my mom lied on the floor crying, saying that she wishes she aborted me. Then he argued with my mom and screamed at each other. Meanwhile I grabbed my backpack with my stuff in it and drove off to my girlfriend's house about 90 minutes away. My parents fortunately don't know where she lives. When he noticed my car was missing, he called me but I didn't pick up. Then he texted me asking where I am and said that he would come get me. I told my girlfriend's family what happened, and they offered to let me stay with them until we go back to campus. My mom later texted me to inform me that my parents have filed a missing person report against me. I texted back, saying that I'm at my girlfriend's place, and that they can't stop me. I got my girlfriend's dad to call my parents, and he told them to F off, and that if they keep treating me like this they will take legal action themselves. I know it's only because she and I are very committed in our relationship, and her parents are supportive of it. Today I messed up by wearing my wife's nightgown and getting CPS called on me. For context, my wife and I have 3 children, 17 female, 14 male, 6 female. When it comes to sleepwear, my wife and I are complete opposites. I prefer nothing. She prefers her long flowing nightgowns. Nothing wrong with that, and she looks amazing in them, so win-win. The night a couple weeks ago was a different story however. I was feeling a bit chilly for some reason and my wife suggested half as a joke that I should wear one of her gowns. We're almost the same size. I'm a small man, so I said screw it, and threw one of them on. It was actually pretty comfy, and when I woke up early I kept it on while I made coffee. My son happened to be up and saw me, and naturally thought it was hilarious. Keep in mind this wasn't anything skimpy. It was the kind of thing a 50s housewife wears in a commercial. All you could see were my hands, feet and head. 2 days later I get a call from child services, informing me they got a tip, and are going to be talking to me and my wife. I should probably mention we live in North Florida. We've been trying to save up to leave since our oldest came out, but moving is expensive these days. I guess my son told his friends what he saw, and someone overheard that. Through some horrible game of telephone I'm now probably a drag queen who's trying to convert my children. Anyway, I talked to my lawyer, and he said I'm probably fine. They don't even take kids from heads as much as they should, so they'll probably leave after one visit where they see I'm not RuPaul. Either way, the whole thing has erased any doubts on our decision to move. Realized that my best friend has a very inappropriate relationship with his mother. My best friend who I grew up with used to get teased a lot about being a mama's boy. Honestly, now that I look back on it, he's always had a very weird relationship with his mother. As we got older and started getting into girls more, he would say weird stuff and normally I'd laugh it off and call him a weirdo, or when we got older I'd tell him he needs to get out the house more. When we were checking out chicks he'd say stuff like my mom has a way better body than she could ever have, or my mom's chest is way bigger and stuff like that. As far as I can tell, it's always been him and his mom. Growing up I had never seen him get a girlfriend. I mean, he talked to girls and stuff, but I never physically saw him have a relationship with any girl until the one he got married to. Fast forward to this last weekend that just passed, and his wife, who I'm really cool with, says to me I hate it when he goes on his family trips cause whenever he comes back home to me he's always cold and acts like a jerk to me. So then we started talking about his family trips. I remember when he started taking family trips when he got married. I always thought that because he was old enough and mature now that he'd go and spend time with his father or something. I don't really know, but when his wife said it was just him and his mom and they do this family trip every month or so, we started talking. Things got even weirder to the point, as was said, okay, enough crazy for one night. He takes family trips over the weekend with just him and his mom every other month. Started to become more frequent the longer his marriage went on. I spoke to him today and just joked around about stuff pertaining his situation, and he got kinda agitated towards me. He said, "What, you think I'm being intimate with my mom? What kind of freak does that?" And I just rolled with it, kinda laughed it off and said I was just messing with him, but his reaction was not genuine at all. There is a lot more to add, but I really don't want to fully go into every detail. If his wife is cool with it, should I be too? He's like a brother to me, so should I just let this go and forget about it? I don't want to ruin our relationship or sour it or even possibly uncover something that makes him do something extremely irrational. If it has been going on this long, I want to try and help him. Update 1. Hello to everyone again. So many people had asked me for an update and PM'd me asking to be updated about the situation. So here it is. Over this past week my wife and my friend's wife sat at their house and had a long discussion on how to approach this very delicate situation. We decided that's it best to just simply come out and say something. Talk about what is going on and what we are feeling. His wife definitely wanted to talk about everything, but she didn't want to do it alone, so she asked if we could sit in with them and let her get down to what's really going on. Fast forward to Saturday and we come over to have this, I don't even know what to call it, big talk. I'm sitting with my wife on one couch and him and his wife is sitting on the other couch watching TV and talking. His wife grabs the remote, turns the TV off and says we need to have a talk. All of us. For some reason she chose to completely ignore everything we went over, how we were going to try and break the ice and lightly touch on the situation and try and be welcoming, warm and understanding, how we set up little spaces so we could backtrack and everything. Nope. She just went straight in for the throat with what's going on with you and your mother, and you need to be honest with me. Everything we planned went right out the window within the very first few seconds. It was like she was attacking him, backing him into a corner instead of trying to be there for him. I was angry, I won't lie, but it's his wife so I couldn't say anything. She bombarded him with all these questions and accusations, and when she finally let up I was able to quickly get in and try and bring the volume of the room down a bit. I brought up stuff from our past when we were kids and in school and some of the things he said that seemed off and his behavior that was awkward. I laughed a little and threw in a few jokes, and thank goodness my wife was there to laugh and try to help make light of some of what was going on. But his face. He had this look of disgust and defeat. He never commented back on anything. Not a single peep. Just sat there quietly in what seemed like he was festering in his own misery. As soon as I was done his wife immediately went back to full-on attack mode with, "You just gonna sit there while we ask you these questions? And your quietness speaks volumes." After about 30 minutes of us asking him questions and stuff he stood up and balled his fists and finally responded. He was angry that we would suggest these things and asked us if we were all sick people and tried to turn the tables on us. That's when his wife stood up and started crying and accusing him of lying because whenever he lies he touches his face a lot and looks at the floor, which is totally true. She started crying more and screaming, asking him very personal questions about their marriage. To that day I was always kinda jealous of their marriage. They always seemed happier than us, never really argued, very passionate towards each other, and they never ever really complained ever. But when she started talking, wow, was I wrong. She said stuff like, "Is that why we never make love, because you're out there doing it with your mother? And you are sick in the head, you need help, you therapy and a psychiatrist." She brought up all these things about them never making love, never spending time together. He never gives her compliments, treats her like crap, ignores her when she's talking to him, holds grudges against her for months at a time, and the list goes on and on. Then she stopped and started dry heaving and put her hand over her mouth and saying she's gonna throw up. My wife got up and held her. She continued to dry heave and call him a sicko. Then he just said screw all of you and stormed out of the house and started walking down the street in the neighborhood. I ran up and caught up to him and asked him to come back and calm down, and he ignored me entirely. He called his mom and she came and picked him up a few blocks down the road where he was just standing while I tried talking to him. When he got in the car he slammed the door, rolled down the window and said, "Never ever talk to me again, I'm deleting you out of my life for good." Then rolled the window up, and that was the last I spoke with him. I went back to his house and tried to console his wife with the help of my wife. She told me all the issues they were having and how deep down she knew what was going on, but he was happy and she didn't know how to handle it. On Monday I went over to his mother's house and she refused to open the door and even threatened to call the police on me if I didn't leave. His wife hasn't seen or spoken to him since that Saturday, but we all know exactly where he is. I'm going to give everything some time to cool down a bit and call over there on Friday and hopefully talk to him or his mother. His wife went to file for divorce. She asked me not to come over anymore. My best friend has blocked me on everything. I don't know what outcome I thought would happen, but I didn't want this. I'm angry and I blame his wife. Honestly, this could have went so much differently, so much more pleasant, but no. She snapped and just went into full-on attack mode. Maybe she's been living with this for years and it all finally violently erupted. Maybe this was her out and she didn't care about saving her marriage or ruining our friendship. I'm angry that we planned all this crap, planned everything, and then boom, there goes the dynamite. Whatever the case is, that weekend I lost my best friend and that hurts so much. I don't even know what he's going through right now. Was he being honest? Was he telling the truth? Was he lying to us? So many questions and so much heartache right now. Anyways, I went and purchased Scum over the weekend to help get my mind off of things. Sit there and lose a few hours in a different reality seems good right about now. A lot of you wanted an update. No happy ending, no questions answered, friendship ruined, marriage ruined, so yeah, there's that I guess. Update 2. After not talking to my best friend for over a year and thinking that I lost him forever, I received a very interesting call 2 weeks ago. It was him and he wanted to talk. He asked to meet at our normal hangout spot and I said, yeah, and he said the date and time, and before I could continue to say anything else, he hung up on me. I didn't know what to think honestly. I was happy, but I also was extremely worried. When we met up and he looked like crap, his face was pale, bags under his eyes, and he looked miserable. I ran over to him and gave him a big hug. I started crying and said how sorry I was for accusing him of that type of stuff and how he's my brother no matter what and all this other stuff. Mostly just spilling my guts and blabbering away to him. He hugged me back and we both cried and apologized, two grown men crying like babies. After the initial waterworks we sat down and he told me how his wife had divorced him and how she spread all these lies about him and stuff on her Facebook. How he had gotten fired from his job because of those lies and all of this other stuff that all came from that messed up attempt at an intervention. I just sat there feeling like complete trash knowing that I caused all of this. Just as I was about to apologize he cut me off and said, "Wait. There is something I need to tell you, man. Remember when I was younger and my parents got that divorce and I told you that mom got really crazy afterwards? Yeah, I remember. The divorce was bad and ugly. His dad cheated on his mom with some super young chick at a fast food place. He told me that after the divorce she started drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't even be able to take him to school or go to work the next day because she'd be so sick. The drinking got worse and one day when he was 15 and sleeping in his bed, his mom came home super late and came into his room completely hammered and essayed him and then had the audacity to snuggle up in bed with him and pass out. After that night, she'd drink, get drunk and then essay him, and when she was sober she'd act like nothing happened. She even started telling him that he was the man of the house and that he had certain responsibilities now that he's the man of the house. This essay continued all the way up until January the 1st of this year. He finally had enough and put a stop it. He said he hasn't seen or talked to his mom since March of this year. I just started crying, man, like seriously crying. Here I was thinking I was his best friend and I didn't even know what was going on all these years. I kinda expected something, but I wasn't 100% sure and I didn't have any type of proof at all. He even said how he thought about offing himself up until he met his wife and she took him out of that house, but his mother would still call him over or plan getaways just to get him away from her. His mother hated his wife with a passion. I never knew he was suffering alone all of these years. How could I even begin to call him my best friend or my brother, and I was never ever there one time for him out of all these years he was going through stuff. He asked me to not say anything to my partner and if I could keep this between me and him. Of course I agreed without hesitation. We spoke about him getting help and he made me promise not to say anything about this to anyone. He said he doesn't want his mom to get into any trouble and he doesn't want her to suffer because she's already suffered enough by his dad. I cannot for the life of me believe that all these years she's essayed him and he's still willing to sit here and protect her, even made me promise not to do anything. Honestly? I want to burn her house down with her in it, and I'm sorry if that sounds cruel, but that's what she deserves. I am so incredibly angry and sad and everything in between. I know I said I wouldn't do anything, but I cannot sit around and let her get away with this all these years and she's just going to live her life carelessly while he now has to spend the rest of his life seeking help and getting his life in order? Screw that. Oh man, I don't know what to do, what I should do. I love him, he's my brother, so I will be there for him and help him get the help he needs, but damn it. Gare. I am going to keep his secret safe with me. He's back in my life and I'm given another chance. I won't mess this up again by jumping the gun. I'm just so damn angry. My heart is hurting and I feel so terrible. I really want that woman to pay. But at the risk of losing my friendship? My family cut contact with me 5 years ago after a fight with my younger brother. Now they want me to come back, but I'm having doubts about it. My family pretty much cut all ties with me 5 years ago. Things had been a bit turbulent for a while, but when I went over to my parents' house for Christmas 5 years ago, I got very drunk one night and got into an argument with my younger brother, which ended up turning physical. I was 19 at the time, he would have been 15, and he came out of it pretty badly. Without going into massive detail, he had said something which struck a nerve. I won't say what because it's quite personal, and not really relevant here, and I ended up injuring him quite badly. There was a question of potentially involving the police, but nothing ever happened in regards to that. In the end they all just told me they wanted nothing to do with me anymore, which is fair enough. I was completely in the wrong and they were absolutely right to want to cut me off. I'm not complaining about that in the slightest. I had already moved out by that stage, so it wasn't a case of kicking me out. It was more just telling me to never come back. Again, I can't blame them for this at all, and would be surprised if you could either. This post isn't about me complaining about being cut off or pretending that I didn't deserve it, because I did, and I'm not trying to play the victim here. I genuinely regret what I did and have spent time trying to self-improve in the wake of it. It was quite difficult for me to come to terms with this for the first year or so afterwards. The only person in my family I had any contact with was my mom. We never really spoke in depth, just small updates, wishing each other happy birthday and things like that. Honestly though, after that first year, things have gotten so much better for me. I stopped drinking, which was the root of a lot of my problems. I got my head down and ended up doing very well at uni. I've now got a job that I love, and I've been with my girlfriend for the best part of 4 years, and things are absolutely great. To be brutally honest, I don't miss my family. My relationship with them hadn't been great for a while before the fight, and as far as I was concerned I didn't miss them and they didn't miss me, and being on a non-contact basis with all of them apart from occasional contact with my mom was for the better. However, over the last few months, my mom began messaging me much more frequently, and asking more personal questions about my life, my work, my relationship, etc. I thought it was just boredom on her part, but she maintained it for a while, and began to introduce the idea of me coming back to visit her at some point, which I always shrugged. She started to persist with it, and then yesterday it all came to a head when she added me to a WhatsApp group chat with the rest of the family. I was then told how they had all come to a family decision that 5 years was enough, that my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me for what happened and that they wanted me to come over at some point to catch up on lost time. These are all quotes from what they sent me. I didn't say much, I just said I wanted time to think. I'm quite torn on this now. Part of me feels like I am obliged to go along with it. They cut contact with me because of my own actions, and if my brother's forgiven me and wants to re-establish contact with me then it's my duty to do so. On the other hand, I feel like since contact was cut my life improved a lot. my relationship with them had been on a downward slope for a fair bit of time beforehand, and I just haven't found myself missing any of it. That's why I'm asking for advice. Would you say that I'm obliged to go and re-establish contact because it was my fault that contact was cut, or do you think it would be acceptable for me not to do so? Update. My family cut contact with me 5 years ago after a fight with my younger brother. Now they want me to come back, but I'm having doubts about it. I'll start off by saying that soon after that post was written I phoned my brother. We talked for a few minutes about how things were going, and then I apologized to him for what happened back then. He didn't specifically say he forgave me, but he was amicable and said that he appreciated me doing it. I'm glad I did it. I know 5.5 years is a long time to have gone without doing it, but that was the first vocal conversation I'd had with him since the family cut contact. He told me that the whole incident hadn't left him with any lasting mental or physical damage, and while I have no way of knowing whether that's completely true, I was glad to hear it. I don't want to make it about myself, but it did also feel like a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. In terms of the actual resumption of contact, it won't be happening for now. After a few days of talking to the family as a collective in the group chat, which I have now left, as well as some individual conversations with different members, I told them that I was happy to increase contact with them through messaging, but that as things stand I didn't think resuming face-to-face contact would be right, and that I wasn't going to do it. As I stated in the initial post, I was already having severe doubts about it, and the conversations I had with them pretty much made my mind up for me. I'll list a few examples of it here. Much of the discussion I had with family was done through a group chat in which I, 25 male, was added to by my mum, 45 female. This group chat also contained my dad, 54 male, and my two brothers, 20 male and 14 male. The group chat was titled Reunion, so it was pretty obvious what their intentions were. The initial language used by them when I was added bothered me. I gave some examples of it in the original post. Things like my mum saying my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me and them coming to a family decision that 5 years was enough. It made it seem like there was no chance of it being a normal family relationship at all, and that I would always be indebted and subservient to them in some form for that. As I said, I had no issue with being cut off and felt they were pretty justified in doing so, but that doesn't mean I would be prepared to come back and be in a constant state of owing one, and likely being made to feel pressured to do things for them because they were oh so kind to find it in their hearts to let me back. This sort of language continued throughout me being in that group chat. Some more examples were being told that I had lots of work to do if we wanted a normal relationship. Notice that they didn't say we, and was also compared to the prodigal son multiple times by my very religious parents, which just made me think they were doing it for their own spiritual reasons rather than actually being interested in having me back as part of the family. The final nail in the coffin was that when I specifically expressed doubts about it, my dad said, after all you did to us as a family, we've decided to let you back in, and then pretty much went on to tell me that I should be biting their hands off for the chance to make amends, and that I was ungrateful for not doing so. I told them I was backing out of it pretty soon after that. A few of the replies to my original post asked if any of them needed an organ. I initially brushed this off as a joke, but after some of the conversations I genuinely think it's possible that that's true. My girlfriend, 24 female, is also a big reason why I was initially having doubts, and a couple of things that were said by my dad completely reinforced these. I 100% know that he would dislike her, not through any fault of her own, but mainly because he has some very old-fashioned views on women, and he's also quite racist. She is only half white, and when I was younger my dad made it pretty clear that he didn't want me to date outside of my race. In the group chat, he described her as my exotic girlfriend and made a couple of very stereotypical assumptions on her based on her race, which made it pretty clear to me that he still found it wrong and abnormal of me to be with a girl who isn't completely white. If I resumed a somewhat normal father-son relationship with him, I'm almost certain that he'd try to interfere in some way, and would at the very least encourage me to end things with her. It's not like I've only been seeing her for a month either. We've been together for almost 4 years and have discussed marriage, so she absolutely takes priority over the family. Those are the main reasons behind me choosing not to go down the route of face-to-face contact with the family. There are a few other things too, such as the fact that they seemed awfully interested in grandchildren who didn't even exist, and also that I suspected that it was all my mom's doing and that the rest of the family weren't that interested. I'm fairly sure she was feeding the others lines. My 14-year-old brother was typing an awful lot like my 45-year-old mom. Let's put it that way. With all these factors combined with my initial doubts about it made my mind up that I wasn't going to resume face-to-face contact. I messaged them telling them that while I did appreciate them trying to get me to do so, I just had too many doubts about it to go and start meeting with them face-to-face or going to their house. I did say that they all had my number now, and were free to text me at any point if they wanted to talk, and then left the group chat. I know they've all read it, because they've all been online since I sent it, but I haven't had a single message from any of them. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I ever will, and yet, I can't really say I feel that sad about it. I'm glad I've apologized to my brother, and if that's the end of all contact with them then so be it. It is what it is. My mum was contacting me every day in the months leading up to her deciding I should start seeing the family again. Now it's beginning to seem to me that she was doing so because she wanted me to return to them on my hands and knees, groveling and begging for forgiveness. Things certainly began to turn a bit sour when it became clear that I wasn't going to do that. Perhaps she sees it as the final betrayal, and wants nothing more to do with me now. At the end of the day, I'm never going to pretend that they were for a second wrong for cutting contact with me. They did it to protect their 15-year-old son, and I completely understand it. Ultimately though, I grew up, ended my addiction and built a life for myself off the back of it without them involved in my life. It's very likely that they still have this image of the 19-year-old who turned completely white when he was told they wanted nothing more to do with him, but that really isn't me anymore. When they initially kicked me out, I felt like I needed them even though we didn't have the greatest relationship. 5 years on from that, I certainly don't think I do anymore. I apologize to anyone who read the initial post and wanted me to go and see them in person again, but this is just how things have turned out. Once again, thank you to everyone for offering support and advice, and I hope that anyone reading this who has their own issues with family and estrangement is able to navigate them, and build a relationship back if they so wish. My dad left money to his sugar baby in his will. It feels wrong to be writing this so early after my father's passing, but I'm confused on and upset on a lot of different levels, and I really need to talk about it. My dad passed away fairly early on. He was 66 and his funeral was last week. He planned his own funeral preemptively, with my oldest sister. It was prepaid for and I hadn't known much about it. I'm the middle child, 37 male. They deliberately hadn't told the rest of us much about it because an S-worker who my dad had been seeing consistently for years would be attending, and we hadn't even known my dad saw S-workers, or that he was attracted to men. That guy is a year older than me, and apparently he'd been seeing him since he was 18, so, I would have been 17, while my father was making love with a guy 1 year my senior. I'm really not sure how I'm supposed to feel about it. My dad had been paying his rent for that time, along with an allowance and a few investments into his career. He's now a kind of performer, but I think it would be too oddly specific to mention and people who know any of us would know exactly who I'm talking about. My mother knew. We spoke about it and I asked why she didn't tell me. They were divorced anyway. Apparently they'd agreed between them not to tell the rest of us besides my sister, but specifically not me because of my age. They said that my dad was insistent that he had to be at the funeral, and included in it. He looked genuinely upset too. I think it was a little inappropriate that all attention was on this glamorous P-word. More than my deceased father, but now I can't shake this feeling that I'm angry with my father either. Back to the will. He left him something like 2 million euros, which was more than anybody else in his life, more than me or any of my siblings, more than my aunts and uncles or their children, more than his grandchildren, more than anybody, and there's no case really to dispute it, because he was of sound mind and he didn't forget anybody. I'm just so unsure how to feel, that age gap. My wife offered to let me cheat if I called off the divorce. My wife and I have been separated for a month. No cheating, nothing like that. We were just yelling and fighting every single day, and honestly for a few days I've been considering a permanent arrangement. She didn't want that. We talked about it and I said I love her but honestly I'm happy being separated and I think for now this is what's best. She said okay, well, I just want you to know I'm absolutely heartbroken but I know this is what you want. I'll give you your space. It was fine but our son called me and said that mom was crying her eyes out for hours. I felt horrible so I had her sister come check in on her and all was fine. She called me today and asked just to talk in person and figure things out. I came over while kids were at school and she gave me champagne and beer. We always had a strict no alcohol or substances rule. She said this is for you. You can drink it if you want. You can drink all you want if you come home. And I said I don't know if this is a good idea and then she said oh in a nervous way. And then well, what if from now on I just do whatever you want? If you want lovemaking I'll give it to you no matter what. If you ever get mad you can whack me. I won't tell anyone. And I said that's just absurd and then she made that nervous ooh again and said, alright, if you come home, you, oh. And then she gave me a face of defeat, and said if you come home, you can cheat on me. All I ask is that we pretend it never happened and I never have to hear about it and then she said if that's what it takes and started crying. I didn't know what to do. She was crying. She asked if there's anything in this world she can do to keep me and I said if she's this desperate, instead of these crazy offers, I'll come back home and give the marriage another chance but we need to go to marriage counseling ASAP. She said of course, I'll get us the best marriage counselor I can. And then she called her therapist and asked for her recommendation on the best marriage counselor she knows. That was earlier today and I'm at my sister's packing some things to go home. We have our first appointment on Tuesday.